You're listening to Popcorn in Orbit, a podcast for sci-fi lovers of all galaxies, hosted by filmmakers Jeremy Major and Ian P. Causer.
Hi, everyone. You got Jeremy here in Canada and Ian in the UK. Oh, we got an interesting topic today, but just before we get to that, I know last time you mentioned a new puppy coming into your life. Has this happened? How did it go?
She's here. Little Leia is here.
Awesome.
She's lovely. She's wonderful. She's getting on great. She's already got me wrapped around her little finger.
No doubt.
Yeah, and it's just carnage, but it's beautiful carnage. Beautiful
the house
carnage.
is ready.
Thank you.
You've prepared for the destruction.
We did our best, but I'd forgotten how small they are, so they can get through the gaps on the little things that I've put to try and stop her getting to wires that can be chewed and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's been some hastily rearrangement of things, and
No doubt.
but they grow so quick. I do know how quickly they grow.
And she's getting along with her older brother?
Yeah, they get on great. He's just in love with her. He's absolutely obsessed with her. He's also quite a bit bigger than her, so we're just trying to prevent him from sitting on her or stepping on her. But he loves her to bits. He loves her to bits. So
That's
all
awesome.
going great. All going great. Thank you, my friend.
Speaking of furry creatures, that makes me think of intergalactic travel. No, not really. It doesn't. Let's talk about today's topic, which was your idea to go this direction, because there's a big portion of the sci-fi world that we've kind of ignored to date, and it's time we do it justice. So take it away.
Yeah, it's time we talk about Star Trek. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a Trekkie, and neither are you, Jay. I think that's fair to say.
That's true.
Yeah.
I have no distaste for it or anything.
There's no anger towards it or anything like that.
No.
We could have very easily just ignored Star Trek, but as a sci-fi podcast, that just feels like doing it a huge disservice. So what I wanted to do was talk about it from the perspective of two people that aren't experts on the subject.
Yeah. That sounds great. Everyone's tuning in to hear us. Ramble haphazardly.
The idea is to pay it the homage it deserves, as in the pop cultural phenomenon that it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to give it the credit that it's due, whilst also trying to understand why two sci-fi nerds have never really got into it.
Yes.
And also kind of discuss the fandom around it. So what I've done is I've done some research. I've delved into Reddit threads.
Mm-hmm.
Many rabbit holes. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating.
It is, yeah.
And fallen down to rabbit holes of understanding the appeal of this incredible cultural phenomenon.
Yes.
While simultaneously coming at it from the perspective of a Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than a Star Trek fan. And I probably should start out by saying this. I'm not a Star Wars fan that dislikes Star Trek. I don't really understand.
This is a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why it has to be partisan.
No.
I don't know why you can't love both. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do love both. But it does appear, certainly on the internet at least, that these are two distinctly different camps. And there is some agitation between them, it appears.
Right.
Which I don't understand now.
So maybe we can bring some rest to that. Maybe we can put people at ease here today.
Yeah, so we thought we'd start small, end the war between Trek and wars.
All right.
No, I just want to try and understand it, because I think it's really important to make clear from the outset, I understand partisan rivalry.
Right.
So I don't want people to get the wrong impression that I'm some hippy-dippy, let's all love each other kind of thing, right?
Yes.
So I'm a Spurs fan, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And part of being a Spurs fan means that I have to hate Arsenal, our big rival.
Right, okay.
I'm also a New York Giants fan. And part of being part of that rivalry is I have to dislike the Eagles and the Cowboys. I love the Giants and I love Spurs, and I don't mind telling you, I can't stand Arsenal. I can't stand the Eagles or the Cowboys.
Wow.
So I do understand partisan rivalry, and I'm part of it when it comes to sport. I don't necessarily understand it when it comes to the movies or TV or different fandoms, though. I don't understand that partisan thing. As you said at the top, quite correctly, neither of us feel any anger or bitterness towards Star Trek whatsoever. But it's trying to kind of understand where that comes from. I think it's an interesting subject to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my first encounter with Star Trek, I think, was through a friend in high school who she and her family were all very almost religious about it. I shouldn't maybe say religious. Her dad was a minister, but they as a family, it was something they did together, was watch Star Trek, and this would have been, I think, Next Generation at the time.
Yes,
they had seen, I think, every episode. It seemed were very familiar with it all. I think for a lot of people, the draw is just how relevant the subject matter is. And I might really be stating the obvious here, but when you look at some of the themes that they take on, they're just so relevant to all, the issues that we're facing as humans.
Yeah, right? And that's not accidental, is it? That's
not at
very
all.
much.
No.
And I think that was intentional from the original series about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, totally.
Whether that's the crew of the Enterprise or the worlds that they visit and the new peoples that they come into contact with.
Sure.
It's a wonderful human message that Star Trek has always sent. I don't know that any parent, since it came out in '66, has ever said, do we want our kids watching Star Trek? Mm-hmm. I don't think that statement has ever been made, because there's something very clean, innocent, and pure about Star Trek's message.
There is, yeah. It's also fascinating how many different incarnations of this show there are, and how it's evolved over time.
It's astonishing. I'll be honest with you, Jay. It's actually intimidatingly big. Coming at it as a guy in my 40s, it's almost like, well, no, you've missed the ship there. You can't.
I feel like there's always a new series to kind of get on board with.
But it doesn't feel right just starting with Picard. I don't know why. Yeah. It feels like, well, you're coming in 800 hours into a story here. You can't do that.
Yeah, it does feel a bit that way.
I very much enjoyed the reboot movies.
Yes.
And this is what really interested me, is that's the first time I've really got into the Star Trek world, was watching those movies and loving them. Research I've done for this podcast suggests that true Trekkies aren't that keen. They're a little, don't like the J.J. Abrams stuff. It doesn't feel like Star Trek.
No, it's a very different take on it.
Apparently, yeah. And they no, this isn't Star Trek. It's too much action. It's too much, for whatever reason.
Sure.
Which then led me to wonder, well, do those films appeal to me because they might, dare I say it, be more Star Warsy? As a huge Star Wars fan, is that why those films appeal to me? I don't know. But it's an interesting question.
You can't think of the new J.J. Abrams Star Trek without a discussion coming up about lens flares.
No. I think JJ's amazing. Super 8 is one of my favourite films. We haven't talked about that actually on this pod. We should talk about Super 8. In fact, why wasn't that in my top 10 favourites list?
It's too late now.
But he does, as much as I love JJ and his movies, he does feel the need to blind me 6 or 7 times per film.
A minute.
Yeah. And it's just like, why? I was really enjoying myself, and now I've just seen spots in front of my eyes for the next 30 seconds. But I am very light sensitive.
Right. I remember hearing at one point that there was literally somebody standing off camera, like shining a light into the lens to get a flare.
Really?
Well, it's like sometimes it's on camera, so you've got that like practical element that's doing it. And I believe it's like that movie was shot with anamorphic lenses, so it happens kind of easily with some of those lenses. But there are times where it needed to be sort of enhanced. So there was a flashlight guy.
Okay.
I don't know if it's true.
I don't know why I feel better with the idea that they just weren't edited out as the camera's moving.
As opposed to added?
A little annoyed if they're added.
I'm a sucker for a lens flare.
Okay. I understand it's one of his signatures, isn't it? And I am being playful, of course, but
yes.
Certainly Into Darkness. I think he nearly gave me a migraine 2 or 3 times with a couple of lens flares there, which I could have done without.
But you like the movie?
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. I really like the incarnation of Captain Kirk, and Chris Pine's iteration of Captain Kirk was fantastic. I just really enjoyed them, and I was quite surprised when I did my research that Trekkies didn't love them. And I think JJ did his best, so to not put people offside. So you go into an origin story of Captain Kirk, which is problematic.
Yes.
So they come up with this Kelvin timeline idea, alternative universe Trek, new Trek, whatever you want to refer to it. So you create an environment that events won't contradict anything that's come before.
Right.
And also, I suppose you get that play where Spock can meet himself. So Zachary Quinto can meet Leonard Nimoy as young Spock and they can actually come together. So that I thought that was really cool. And I would like to think that would have eased any concerns about them kind of ruining any legacy of the original series, you know.
Yes.
But there was definitely... Not everybody. I mean, I saw a lot of comments online where it's like, I'm a mad Trekkie, original series is my favourite. Are J.J. Abrams reboots my favourite part of the Star Trek universe? No. But I'd rather have these Star Trek films than no Star Trek films, and they're quite cool about it. Very reasonable. But there's also a lot that are just like, this is not Star Trek. It's too many explosions, too much action, and they don't. Ironically, JJ's taking it a little bit. I know this from my Star Wars fandom, from people who don't particularly love The Force Awakens and the reboot of the Star Wars. You know,
yes.
But I do feel like he's on a situation where he can't win.
I think you're right about that.
You know, if you're taking on the 2 most iconic franchises in sci-fi history, with new content, you're gonna upset some people, I guess.
Which kind of opens the door to this conversation around fandom and how horrible it can be.
It can, yeah. It's, as I say, I understand. Well, you can never condone abuse in any fandom.
Yes.
Maybe just because I'm English and football is such a cultural phenomenon here.
Right.
That abuse at football grounds is the norm. And we probably shouldn't just accept it, but we do. But for some reason, when I see it in pop cultural fandom, I find it shocking. And I can't speak to Trek, but I can speak to Star Wars as a Star Wars fan. And I thought the fact that review bombing took place for The Acolyte before it even released is pretty disgusting when you think about it.
It is, yeah.
You haven't even seen it, and you've already, just because you don't like something about this thing being made, we're going to review bomb it and try and sink this thing straight out of the gate.
Yeah.
But worse than that is the attacks on individuals, I think. And I'm thinking specifically about Phantom Menace. I'm thinking about
Jar Jar. Is that where we're going here?
Yeah. I love George Lucas, but you want to have a pop at George Lucas about Phantom Menace, that's fine. He's the daddy. He's created this thing. He's a billionaire. You know, he's got his own. I know he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, but he's the man. Directing it at him. If you want to do that, I don't understand why you would, but if that's the way to direct it. But what I don't understand is directing it at an actor that's playing a role that's been written for him. So Arma Best has talked about the abuse he's taken for playing Jar Jar Binks and how it almost ruined his career. Jake Lloyd, who played a very young Anakin Skywalker, you know, he's talked quite how badly it affected his life. He was a little boy when he did this. And the negativity towards his performance as a little boy, you know, drove him out of the business effectively, and has given him psychological issues. That's just unacceptable to me.
As you're saying this, I'm sort of trying to relate it to my own experiences. And, you know, I'm a big Jurassic Park fan, of course. And, you know, at the time that just made such an incredible impression on me. And when Lost World came out, I really didn't care for it, you know, and I was maybe a bit of a hater at the time on it, right? But as we're kind of talking about this, I'm thinking about, you know, some different perspectives on it where it's sort of inevitable at some point when you like shake up or try and evolve something that you've created, you're going to upset people because that, like in my situation, that Jurassic Park seems so precious. It's like, it's just sort of perfect. Don't mess with it. And now you're trying to take it in a new direction so you can do more with it, or, whatever the case might be. People are very resistant to that kind of change.
They are.
But we take it so seriously in some ways.
We do. But my argument has always been, does the existence of Jurassic World in any way, shape or form impinge on your enjoyment of the original Jurassic Park film?
No, I suppose not.
That's my point, and that's always been my point.
No, I suppose not.
The existence of Jaws the Revenge sure as hell doesn't take away from Jaws.
Yeah, fair point.
But you're absolutely right. There's many people that fall into that category. You're absolutely right. It is a common phenomenon. But I don't think Jaws 2, Jaws 3, and Jaws the Revenge, which are objectively terrible films, in any way, shape or form, takes away from the genius of Jaws.
No, it doesn't.
Now, where my example might fall a little flat is, except for an appearance by Roy Scheider and Lorraine Gary in Jaws 2, all of the talent involved in Jaws is not involved in the sequels.
Right.
Spielberg isn't there, Robert Shaw isn't there, Richard Dreyfuss isn't there, the different screenwriters, etc., etc.
Yes.
But the irony was that Jaws 2, the book, wasn't even written by Peter Benchley. It was written by a guy called Hank Searles. So Peter Benchley, who wrote the book, didn't even want to do a sequel to Jaws. But I do think there's this, when something hits that big at a box office, there is a financial demand. We have to follow this up.
Yes.
The sequels are the dirty part of the fact that Jaws was successful.
I think there's also something to the fact that the audience does want more. There's this part of you that wants more of the same because you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
But then you're so resistant to it potentially being different.
You know, the one that really rings a bell for me in the 90s when I was a kid, I was probably late teens. Yes. And I remember going, oh no, with Speed 2. So I love Speed.
Yes. Yeah.
Keanu, Sandra Bullock.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Yeah. And then I read in Empire, I think, they're developing Speed 2. And it's not going to be Keanu. Right. Sandra Bullock came back, but it's not going to be Keanu. And I'm going, oh no. One of the few times I was right in my life, it was not worth doing, was it? Let's be honest. Because it's something so...
High concept.
High concept. Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah. It's something so high concept, which I think Jaws is extremely high concept.
Yes. Yeah.
That why are you repeating that?
I know. It's a once in a lifetime moment.
When it becomes a purely financial decision to make a movie, I think that's when you really are scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's not going to be great. So who wants these things? Because I didn't, even as a teenager. I didn't want Speed 2. I knew.
No, but that's not necessary. It's not. I feel like Speed is not a sort of fandom type film. You don't have a cult following.
Were you looking forward to Lost World?
Yeah, absolutely.
You were, yeah. And were you disappointed on first viewing of Lost World?
I actually left quite angry from the theater.
Did you really?
I did. Yeah. Now, if I look at that sort of more maybe objectively, the movie, it didn't have that sense of wonder that the first one had. Like, you were kind of into dinosaurs right from the get-go. Do you know what I mean? Like, so much of the charm of what I liked about Jurassic Park kind of got lost in a completely different sort of plot line, all new characters. It really, the only link was the dinosaurs, and it felt like we just saw too much of them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So my point is not to be too sort of critical of the movie, because it's still a spectacular accomplishment, but it was a completely different type of film than the first one.
Yeah. What I find it interesting is, you're right, Lost World is a good movie. It's a Spielberg movie. It's a good movie. It's the emotional attachment you have to this thing. It's got nothing to do. It's almost like you couldn't not be disappointed. I was genuinely worried about seeing Blade Runner 2049.
Right. Yes.
Because it's like, oh my Lord. I was nervous all the way through the film. How crazy is that? Yeah. And is it as good as Blade Runner? I would argue not. But it's a really, really good movie on its own right. And I remember thinking, my respect for Villeneuve, and it was already there, went through the ceiling. She's like, wow, he really did pull this off.
Yes.
But I don't think there was ever going to be a possibility where I came out of 2049 going, that's better than Blade Runner. because it's an emotional attachment to Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But the other one that really rings a bell, which is kind of sci-fi, is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I saw anger in that theatre when people were leaving from Indiana Jones diehards. And I'm an Indiana Jones diehard. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
I saw genuine anger because they didn't like the MacGuffin. They didn't like the fact it was sci-fi.
Yeah.
They didn't like some of the CGI involved, which should probably never... They wouldn't have used CGI, actually, in any of the original trilogy, would they really?
Absolutely
It would have been practical effects, wouldn't it?
Practical, green screen, yeah.
Yeah. So, whereas I didn't feel that sense of anger, I just felt a sense of... I'm an extremely loyal... Loyalty is my biggest positive and also my biggest failing. I can be loyal to people beyond when I should be, really.
Yes.
So when I'm a fan... I've got your back, right? I'm a Indiana Jones fan, I'm a Steven Spielberg fan, I'm a Harrison Ford fan. That could have stunk. That could have been the worst movie of the century, and I'd defend it. That's the way I'm built.
Okay, yeah.
So it's still emotional.
Yes.
But I'm tilted the other way.
Right.
So I found myself getting into arguments where I'm trying to justify Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as good as Last Crusade. And I don't think that, but I'm on that side of the argument in the pub because they're my guys. I'm going to go to their backs. and you go home and you go to bed and you're looking at the ceiling going, geez, Stephen, really Crystal Skulls? So I agree with the people, but I'm fighting for Stephen on that one. So that is exactly the same. It's an emotional reaction. It's just a different emotional reaction. So I fall into the category of people who defend anything because it's been made by these people.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
Which is probably why I'm defensive of Phantom Menace.
Right.
Do I like Phantom Menace? No. But even that hurts saying that.
Yeah.
You know,
but you will defend it.
But it's George Lucas, and he created this incredible thing, and I got his back.
When these things kind of evolve into something bigger, then it becomes more about the big picture.
Yeah.
Like now that Jurassic Park has become Jurassic World, and there's this huge, canon and all this kind of lore and everything. Now you kind of look at it as a whole. It becomes less about that first movie and more about the world that's been created. And so some of those middle pieces that maybe don't feel on their own as spectacular become a part of this sort of bigger, better thing now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the imperfections.
No, it doesn't. It's fascinating to me that these things provoke an emotional reaction in us. You are angry leaving the theatre.
Yeah.
I'm defending Phantom Menace and Crystal Skull like they're Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Even though I know they're not.
Sure.
And that's what we see in these subreddits with Star Trek is you've got the guys that they're original series guys. Then you've got the guys who are next generation guys. They probably think of somebody like me as a Johnny come lately. Oh, wow. So you've seen the J.J. Abrams reboot, which, by the way, isn't real Star Trek. And now you think you know Star Trek.
Right. Yeah.
But it's all one big, wonderful sci-fi umbrella that we're sitting under.
Yes.
And it's just, it shows you how important this stuff is. Because it's what I call the most important, unimportant things in your life are the things that add the flavor.
They do.
The emotional response we have to this stuff to me is just it's fascinating. I'll go back to the question I think I asked at the top. Why are two sci-fi nerds never got into Star Trek before J.J. Abrams' reboot?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it?
And I can't say that I didn't see any of it because I watched the show, and again, Next Generation was kind of happening when I was a teenager, so I'd watch it periodically. And then I've seen a few of the movies. I owned a theater for a little while, and we had a lot of requests for Wrath of Khan. I think it's sort of considered one of the best.
I think it is
those original movies. And so we did finally show it, and so I saw it, of course, that way.
It's interesting. Star Trek Into Darkness was my favorite of the three, but I kind of understand why that one's disliked because apparently it kind of messes with Wrath of Khan because Khan is a character in.
Okay,
Is the antagonist in Into Darkness. But I love the fun of it. And interestingly, from what I read, and it'd be interesting to know if this is just anecdote or it's true, Star Trek Beyond, the third film, was kind of co-written by Simon Pegg, and I think that's the one that's probably they're most fond of.
Okay,
of Trekkies. That's the one that they like or they hate the least.
They hate the least,
I think Simon Pegg is a Trekkie, and maybe they just feel that his his contributions to the script and the story brought an authenticity from their fan perspective because he's one of them.
Yeah.
And it's things that we can't possibly recognize because we're not Trekkies that he did that make that. And it's also the coolest moment in the whole three movies is their use of Beastie Boys' Sabotage as a genuine plot point because I loved that song when I was growing up in the 90s.
Yeah.
And just to hear that coming out full blast as they go into battle, I thought was really cool. But perhaps the coolness, maybe that's it. Maybe it's the coolness that Trekkies don't like.
That is the word that sums it up. Like what Abrams did was make it cool.
Maybe that isn't part of the Trek experience.
True.
Why don't they like Star Wars, do you think? Because you don't love Star Wars. You might be able to throw more.
Jeez, all I've done is criticize films.
No, I didn't say you didn't like it. I said you don't love Star Wars.
Right,
so,
right.
Which is I think is
but
fair.
Simon Pegg, I was just going to say, has a role in Force Awakens, does he not? You can't recognize him.
Okay.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was kind of an Easter egg, I think, when it first came out.
I heard a lot. I heard like Daniel Craig and Prince William as stormtroopers, but I don't know how true those stories are.
And I think he's the one that when she's selling stuff.
Is he really?
Yeah,
and
he's
giving
there.
her food. Yeah.
He's got a funny face on and whatever else.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say I bumped into him. I didn't bump into him.
You and you're smashing into people.
Yeah, I know, smashing into people. Hardly. I did actually have a very brief interaction with him years ago in London. He was an extraordinarily kind and nice chap, and I
that's awesome.
Warmed to him immensely.
He's just one of those guys that such a likable character always. It doesn't matter what movie it is.
Yeah, so to sum up, we both respect Star Trek. We both are very happy it's out there. It's here. It's part of us.
Yes.
We don't entirely understand it. And I hope any Trekkie listening, rather than being angry with us for not knowing what we're talking about, just will respect the fact that we haven't ignored it. We wanted to talk about it because it needs to be talked about. It deserves to be talked about.
That's right.
And personally, I hope they make more of these movies with the Chris Pine, Zoe Saldana cast. I think they've been fantastic. The one thing that I found interesting and possibly why we haven't had any more is when you look at they spent $185 million making Star Trek Beyond to take a gross of $350 roughly.
Yeah.
So they're not making money. That's the only concern for me that why we might not see more is I don't think you can spend $185 million on a Star Trek movie. Just don't think it's possible to recoup that. And interestingly, this isn't to annoy anybody, I promise. I'm not one-upping anybody. But Beyond was released in the same year as Rogue One, and Rogue One took over $1 billion at the box office. So if there are any questions of what's bigger, Star Trek or Star Wars, then
those words mean war. Uh-oh.
Slam dunks Trek. But other than that, I really respect it.
That's the note you're leaving people on?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to... It was interesting because they were released in the same year.
Right.
Roughly the same budget. But Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, takes 3 times plus at the box office. But in all seriousness, I would love to see more of those Star Trek movies, but you can't spend $185 million on them because they're just going to die on the vine. You need to be making them for $75-80 million. And I still think you could make Star Trek Beyond just as good for $75-80 million.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yeah. Well, if you think about its actual roots, they're pretty simple.
Yeah.
Some of that production design was pretty basic. I know it was the 60s, but it doesn't necessarily require maybe the vastness that those movies took on.
No.
You know?
I wonder if that's part of why people didn't like it. 185 minutes. Maybe a Trekkie would be sitting there going, yeah, we know we've been saying that. What are you doing?
They're very contained.
Yeah.
You know?
And to me, because I grew up with reruns as a little kid in the 80s, and I would watch the original series because the other option in England was Doctor Who. Yeah. And the production design on Star Trek was way better than the production quality on Doctor. The sets wobbled on Doctor Who.
Oh, gosh. Don't slam a door.
Yeah, don't slam a door, whatever you do. So Doctor Who, it was almost unwatchable to me. And,
oh, my gosh.
Yeah, the production value on Star Trek felt like it was huge in comparison.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rogue One, baby.
Okay, we cannot end a Trekkie episode.
No,
He's talking about Rogue One.
Yeah.
But funny story. There was this little tree I found growing in my backyard, just in the back corner. It's kind of, a little sort of rough part of the yard. And I was cleaning up some stuff one day, and I found this tiny little pine tree. I was like, I got to save this tree. It's so cute. It was no bigger than my hand.
Really?
So I put it in a pot, and I gave it a name. Do you know what I named it?
Oh, Chris.
Yeah. So Chris is still out there today getting snowed on, but he's there. Little Chris Pine in the backyard.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love the fact that you saved that. I did that with a little oak that came up in the middle of my lawn.
It's just so cute, those little plants.
Yeah. But I didn't name him because I'm not weird.
Well, if there's one thing I've learned from Star Trek, it's we got to take care of our planet.
We do.
Look after our world,
I do love that about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a proper greenie. So
yeah.
I do understand that. We love you, Trekkies. I am. I'm going to try and watch Picard and try and understand a bit more about it. And maybe when we do, we'll have a more intelligent discussion about Star Trek, and I can give you more.
Instead of this less intelligent one? No.
Well, not intelligent, a more...
Informed?
Thank you. A more informed... Yeah, lots of dead air on this episode.
No, I do want to hear from people, their thoughts on all of this.
It would be nice to hear from Trekkies about whether the Reddits I went down are just a small proportion of the Trekkie populace,
yes.
Or is there genuinely a dislike of the reboot movies? And if there is, why? Because we both like them.
Yeah.
And I would assume bringing more people into the Trek universe is a good thing.
I know.
Maybe they don't want us.
Well, I'm going to start at episode 1.
Episode 1 of the original series.
And just start working my way through.
Yeah. I think I'm going to...
I might not be available for a while.
Well, the next pod on Star Trek will be in about 4 years' time, I think.
Maybe.
But I think I'm going to start with Picard. I think on Prime, I've heard really good things about Picard. Mm-hmm. So I'll certainly watch the pilot episode before going to The Mandalorian.
If there's one thing I could say about it, it's that there was always this kind of quest for peaceful resolution. Yes. Maybe our world needs a little more Star Trek right now.
Absolutely. There's certainly something to be said for the messaging in Star Trek, you're right.
Yeah, there is.
It's about peace, and it's about coming together. And the world could use that. And
look at us here, speaking intergalactically to each other.
Yeah. This wouldn't be possible without Star Trek. Not sure I'm right on my facts there, but...
yeah.
No, I like that. Mm-hmm. We need more Star Trek.
We do.
We do need more Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to Andor Season 2.
I don't know if we've come to any peaceful resolution on Star Trek versus Star Wars, but maybe we don't need one. Maybe we can
I didn't really... I hope I haven't turned it into that. I didn't want it to really be that.
I know.
I'm just having fun, but I don't understand where the anger comes from.
Well, in the spirit of Star Trek, we can just love all franchises equally.
Absolutely.
All right, Ian. It's been a pleasure talking about this with you today, and look forward to the next one.
Me too. Thanks, Jay.
Popcorn in Orbit is produced by the Shooting Eye and Ice River Pictures.